What's going on, everybody? So in the past, we've been using a lot of plugins to manipulate our audio. But what's really important is knowing how each of those plugins affect things. So this week, we're going to be using a single click and using our plugins to make the sound effects. But before we begin, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any future content. So as I mentioned, we're going to use one single click and we're just going to let the plugins do all the talking. Now, the reason that I want to dive into this is, one, it's an absolutely great way for you to learn what your plugins do. And two, because of how you route things through your signal chain, you can come up with endless possibilities for this. So to get started, the first thing that we're going to do is we're actually just going to put a click track in here. And it doesn't matter what you have your BPM set to, because we're only going to grab one single click. And we're just going to select a little bit and we're going to go ahead and bounce it. And now that we've got that imported back in, you can see that we've got a little bit of a click here. So that's the sound that we're going to use. All we want is enough sound to get into the plugin to trigger a reaction. So we're going to go ahead and crop this out, add a new track, paste it back in, and then we can delete this track as well as our click track. Now, to give us a little bit more space to work with, I am going to consolidate some silence here. And we'll just go ahead and select that and consolidate that. So now we've got a lot of silence that we can play with if we're going to add like a reverb or something of that sort. So one of the first things that we want to do to find more real estate to work with is we want to take this click and then we want to find a way to draw it out. Now there's a couple different ways that you can do that. You can throw a reverb on it, you can throw a delay on it. So we're going to go ahead and start with a delay. Now I have no end goal here. We just want to see what type of processing we can do and to turn this one little click into something. So I'm going to go ahead and start with a delay. And we're just going to grab our mod delay here. And because I don't have a direction, we're just going to throw a preset on this. Alright, so I threw a preset on here and I played around with the settings a little bit. And you can literally do anything you want. But this is what we end up with. And so now that we've got our delay on there, while you can't see it in the waveform, this gives us a lot more real estate to work with, because anything that we add after that, this delay is going to go into that plugin. All right, so the next thing that I'm going to do, just to try and give it a little bit more flavor, for lack of a better term, I'm going to throw a distortion on it. This Berserker distortion is actually one that I got for free from Waves for their Black Friday. So after playing around with some of these settings, this is what we end up with. And so now it gives our sound a little bit more grit, a little bit more frequency content to play with as well. So the next thing that I'm going to add to this is a convolution reverb, which if you guys don't know what convolution reverbs are, they're reverbs that take a sample of an actual space and then applies that reverb to your sound. I do have a really awesome video planned for next year with convolution reverbs, so definitely make sure you hit that notification bell as well as subscribe so you don't miss out on that. But the convolution reverb that we're going to use for this video is the M Convolution EZ from Melda Productions. So if you guys remember the video that I did on different vocal effects, there was some really cool plugins from Melda Productions. This comes along with that same free bundle. I'll leave the link in the description below for that, but you can also find it in that previous video. So as I was playing around with this plugin, I found a couple really cool convolution reverbs that I liked. But this one in particular, it comes in the early reflections, and it's the very last one, and it gives our sound a really sci-fi sound to it. Let's take a listen. So it's adding a really short reverb to it, so it almost sounds kind of blended together. But it also sounds like it's on a metal surface, so we're getting a lot of really hard slapback in that reverb. So at this point, I'm just grabbing random plugins just to kind of see how they sound. You can pull them in, pull them out, switch them around. As I mentioned, this is a great way to learn exactly what your plugins do. And I found for this next plugin, just throwing a comb filter on there kind of increases that sci-fi sound and makes it almost musical. So let's take a listen. So while I really don't have an end goal for this particular audio sample, I'm not going to do a whole lot more to it because I'm really happy with the audio quality. Sometimes when you start stacking plugins, you get into a lot of digital artifacting, and so far I don't have any of that. One thing I also added to this is I sidechained a compressor, and it's a fairly hefty compressor. I use this technique a lot when I'm mixing music, specifically on like a kick drum. I'll sidechain a compressor and I'll over compress it, and then I'll bring the volume level down a little bit. That way you still get like the punch of that kick drum coming through, but then you get a lot of fatty compressed audio behind it. So this is the same technique that I would use in that sense. Depending on the device that you're listening to this on, you might not even notice a difference. But if you're listening to it on studio monitors, you'll definitely be able to tell. And I'll mute and unmute the sidechain just so you can hear that difference. So for those of you who could tell, you can hear that really fatty sound behind whatever it is you want to call this sound. And I think I'm going to leave that particular sound right where it is. Now, like I said, we didn't have an end goal. This is really just so you guys can get familiar with your plugins. But if you have a place where you think you could use this particular sound, I'll bounce it out and there will be a Google Drive link in the description below. And if you guys create anything crazy using this method, I'd really like to hear it. So feel free to send me a link on any one of these social media channels. Until next time.